Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was trained by Tsunade Senju and Shizune as his co-trainer for 3 years and he awakens monstrous strength along with medical ninjutsu, and he signs the slug summoning contract, becoming the next summoner of the slugs on the day before the UA entrance, and gets accepted into Class 1A. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The sky over Muzidafu was a bruised purple, the color of a healing hematoma, as the sun began its descent behind the jagged skyline of high-rises and hero agencies. For most, the twilight hour was a time of winding down, of commuting home to warm dinners and televised hero interviews. For Izuku Midoriya, it was the time when the shadows grew long enough to hide his tears. He walked with a heavy, shuffling gait, his bright red sneakers scuffing against the pavement. His shoulders were hunched so high they almost touched his ears, a defensive posture he had adopted years ago, and never quite managed to shake. In his right hand, he clutched a charred, damp notebook, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. It smelled of burnt paper and pond water, a sensory reminder of the day's humiliation. If you want to be a hero that badly, there's a quick way to do it. Believe that you'll be born with a quirk in your next life and take a swan dive off the roof. Katsuki Bakugo's voice echoed in Izuku's mind, bouncing around his skull like a ricocheting bullet. The cruelty of it wasn't what hurt the most, it was the casualness. It was the fact that for Kaken, and for everyone else, Izuku's existence as a quirkless individual was a cosmic joke. A mistake. Something to be discarded. Izuku stopped walking. He stood under a flickering streetlight that buzzed like an angry hornet. He looked at his hand. It was trembling. I can't just give up, he whispered to the empty street. But the words felt hollow, like helium escaping a balloon. But without a quirk, without power, what can I actually do? He wiped his eyes with his sleeve, smearing soot across his cheek. He needed to get home. His mother, Inko, would worry if he was late, and he didn't have the heart to explain why his uniform was singed and wet. To avoid the main thoroughfares where he might run into Bakugo or his lackeys, Izuku took a sharp left turn, cutting through the red light district. It was a seedier part of Muzidafu, a place where pro-heroes rarely patrolled unless there was a major villain attack. Neon signs advertised quirk-enhanced massages and liquor luck. The air smelled of stale beer, cigarette smoke, and rain. Izuku kept his head down, clutching his backpack straps, trying to make himself invisible. You old hag. You think you can just walk away after a run like that? The shout shattered the ambient noise of the street. It was harsh, guttural, and violent. Izuku flinched, stopping in his tracks. Ahead of him, in the mouth of a narrow alleyway nestled between a pachinko parlor and a yakitori stand, a commotion was brewing. 3 men stood in a semicircle. They were large, radiating the kind of cheap menace that defined low-level thugs. One had arms that looked like jagged rock, another had fingers that extended into long, whip-like tendrils. The third, clearly the leader, was wearing a flashy purple suit that strained against his bulk. Facing them were 2 women. The one in front was striking. She appeared to be in her, perhaps, late 20s or early 30s, with honey blonde hair tied back in 2 low pigtails. She wore a green haori with the kanji 4 gamble on the back, thrown loosely over a gray kimono-style blouse. Her stance was slouching, casual, almost bored. Her face was flushed with the unmistakable glow of intoxication. Behind her stood a younger woman with short, dark hair, clutching a small pig wrapped in a blanket. She looked terrified, or perhaps just exasperated. I told you, the blonde woman slurred, waving a hand dismissively. I'll pay you back. I just need to hit one more machine. I can feel the luck turning. The winds are shifting. The winds ain't shifting, lady, the suit-wearing thug growled. You owe the Kaisaki Group 3 million yen. You cleaned out our loan sharks, lost it all on slots, and now you're trying to skip town? 3 million? The blonde blinked, looking back at her companion. Shizune, did we spend that much? Lady Tsunade, please, the dark-haired woman, Shizune, hissed, hugging the pig tighter. I told you we should have stopped at the appetizer round. We don't have that kind of money, Taunton. The pig squealed in agreement. See? The thug cracked his knuckles. Pay up. Or we take it out of your hide. And maybe we sell the pig for bacon. Izuku watched from behind a telephone pole, his heart hammering against his ribs. This was a classic mugging scenario. A hero should intervene. A hero would intervene. But Izuku wasn't a hero. He was a middle school student with a burnt notebook and zero power. Call the police, his brain screamed. Run and find a pro. But his feet didn't move backward. His eyes were locked on the blonde woman. She didn't look scared. She looked annoyed. But the men were closing in. The rock-armed man raised a fist the size of a cinder block. Listen here, Grandma, the thug sneered. I'm gonna smash that pretty face of yours unless you hand over everything you have. The word grandma seemed to lower the temperature in the alleyway by 10 degrees. The blonde woman's eyes, previously glazed with sake, sharpened into focused points of amber fire. Who are you calling, Grandma? The rock man swung. Stop! The scream tore from Izuku's throat before he realized he was making it. His body moved on its own. It was a sensation he had described in his notebooks a dozen times when analyzing All Might's debuts, but feeling it was entirely different. It was a suspension of logic, a hijack of the nervous system by the soul. Izuku dropped his bag and sprinted. He wasn't fast. He wasn't strong. He was a terrified child running into a meat grinder. He threw himself between the blonde woman and the descending rock fist. He didn't have a plan. He just threw his arms up in a pathetic crossguard, squeezing his eyes shut, bracing for death. I'm sorry, Mom. Kid, move! The dark-haired woman screamed. The impact never came. Or rather, the impact didn't hit him. There was a sound like a thunderclap trapped inside a tin can. The air pressure spiked so violently that Izuku's ears popped. A gust of wind blasted his hair back, tearing the tears from his eyes. He slowly opened them. He was alive. He was standing exactly where he had been a second ago. But the rock-armed thug was gone. Izuku blinked, confused. He looked to his left. The blonde woman, Tsunade, had stepped in front of him. She had one finger, just her index finger, extended. Across the alley, embedded deeply into the brick wall of the pachinko parlor, was the thug. He was unconscious, his rock arm crumbled to dust, his body hanging limply from a crater that looked like it had been made by a wrecking ball. Silence descended on the alley. It was heavy and suffocating. The leader in the purple suit stared at his comrade, then back at the woman. His cigarette fell from his mouth. What the hell is your quirk? Tsunade didn't answer. She looked down at Izuku. Her expression was unreadable. She studied his trembling knees, his terrified face, and the way he was still holding his arms up to protect her. You're a stupid one, aren't you? She muttered. Her voice was rough, like gravel tumbling in a dryer. Izuku lowered his arms, his teeth chattering. You jumped in front of a punch meant for me, she said, tilting her head. You don't have a combat quirk. I can tell by the way you stand. You have no muscle density. You're shaking like a leaf. You would have died. My body, it just moved, Izuku stammered. Tsunade's eyes widened slightly. A flash of memory superimposed itself over Izuku's face. A young boy with brown hair and goggles, grinning about his dream to be Hokage. Nawaki. The moment was broken by the remaining two thugs. Fear had turned to desperation. Kill them! The leader screamed. She's just one woman. Get her! The thug with the whip fingers lashed out. His fingers elongated into razor-sharp cords, aiming to slice both Tsunade and Izuku in half. Shizune, cover the brat's eyes, Tsunade ordered calmly. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Before Izuku could react, the dark-haired woman was behind him. She didn't use a quirk. She moved with a speed that blurred the air. Her hand clamped over Izuku's eyes, plunging him into darkness. Don't look, sweetie, Shizune whispered in his ear. This gets messy. Izuku heard a sound. It was a wet, sickening thud. Then a crack, like a tree snapping in a hurricane. Arg! Wait! Wait, I'm sorry! I take it back. I don't want the money! Crack! The ground beneath Izuku's feet shook violently. It felt like an earthquake, a localized tremor that rattled his teeth. He heard the sound of masonry collapsing, the screech of metal tearing, and finally, silence. You can let him go now, Shizune, Tsunade's voice came. It sounded bored again. The hand was removed. Izuku blinked, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. His jaw dropped. The alleyway was remodeled. The pavement was shattered into a spiderweb of fissures. The dumpster had been flattened into a metal pancake. And the two remaining thugs? They were piled on top of the first one, groaning in agony, half buried in a pile of rubble that used to be a fire escape. Tsunade stood in the middle of the destruction, dusting off her hands. There wasn't a scratch on her. She hadn't even broken a sweat. Well, she sighed, turning to Shizune. That kills the mood for gambling. We should probably find a new hotel before the local heroes show up. Shizune sighed, adjusting her glasses. Lady Tsunade, you destroyed public property again. The debt was 3 million, but the property damage is going to be at least 5. Put it on my tab, Tsunade grumbled. She turned her gaze to Izuku. Izuku froze. Up close, her presence was overwhelming. It wasn't just fear, it was awe. He had analyzed hundreds of heroes. He had seen Mount Lady grow to the size of a building and Death Arms lift trucks. But this felt different. There was no flashy transformation. No emitter glow. Just raw, condensed power. Hey kid, she said, leaning down. She smelled of sake and sakura blossoms. You hurt? Izuku shook his head frantically. And no. I'm fine. That was amazing. Was that a strength enhancer? Or maybe a tactile telekinesis? You destroyed the wall, but the structural integrity of the building above remained intact, which suggests extreme precision. The muttering started. It was a waterfall of words, a defense mechanism he couldn't control. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. She looked at Shizune. He breathes through his ears, doesn't he? He's in shock, Shizune said gently. She stepped forward and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Thank you for trying to help us. It was very brave. It was stupid, Tsunade corrected sharply. She poked Izuku in the forehead. Brave gets you killed. Smart keeps you alive. Remember that. She turned on her heel, her green coat flapping. Come on, Shizune. Let's go. I need a drink that doesn't taste like lighter fluid. They began to walk away. Izuku watched them go. This was it. They were leaving. He would go back to his life. Back to being Deku. Back to the burning notebooks and the pitying stares. Take a swan dive. No. He saw the power in that woman's hands. He saw how she stood, unafraid, unbreakable. She didn't look like a hero who smiled for cameras. She looked like a warrior who had survived hell. Wait! Izuku ran after them. He stumbled over a piece of rubble but caught himself. Please wait. Tsunade stopped but didn't turn around. What do you want, kid? Autograph? I don't give them. Teach me. The words ripped out of his throat, raw and desperate. Tsunade slowly turned around. Her eyes were cold. What did you say? Izuku clenched his fists at his sides. He looked down at his red shoes, then forced himself to look up, meeting her gaze. Teach me how to be strong. Like you? Tsunade stared at him for a long moment. Then she threw her head back and laughed. It was a loud, boisterous laugh that echoed off the alley walls. Teach you? Kid, look at you. You're a twig. I could snap you by sneezing. Go home, drink some milk, and play hero with your friends. I don't have any friends. Izuku shouted. The laughter died instantly. I don't have friends, Izuku repeated, his voice shaking but gaining volume. I don't have a quirk. Everyone says I'm useless. They call me Deku. They say I should just die. He took a step forward. But I want to save people. I want to save people with a smile, just like All Might. But I can't. I can't do it like this. I tried to save you, and I almost died. I'm weak. But you're the strongest person I've ever seen. Please. I'll do anything. I'll work harder than anyone else. Just give me a chance. Tsunade looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the desperation, the tears brimming in his large green eyes, but also the fire. It was a familiar fire. It was the will of fire, burning in a place where it shouldn't exist. Shizune, Tsunade said quietly. What do you think? Shizune looked at Izuku with sympathy. He has no chakra network that I can sense, Lady Tsunade. Or wait. She squinted. It's there. It's incredibly dense, but dormant. It's like it's been calcified because he's never used it. But teaching him? It would take years just to get him to basic proficiency. I don't care how long it takes. Izuku cried. Tsunade sighed. She rubbed her temples. I'm retired, kid. I'm not a teacher. I'm a gambler who likes to drink and avoid responsibility. You're barking up the wrong tree. I'll carry your luggage. Izuku blurted out. I'll pay off your debts. I mean, I don't have money, but I'll work. I'll cook. I'll clean. Tsunade paused. You'll clean? Yes. You'll handle the debt collectors when they come knocking? I'll try. Tsunade looked at Shizune. A wicked grin slowly spread across her face. It was the smile of a predator spotting a particularly interesting meal. I do need a porter, Tsunade mused. And Shizune complains about her back when she carries the oversized sake barrels. Lady Tsunade! Shizune protested. Tsunade walked back toward Izuku. She loomed over him, her shadow engulfing his small frame. What's your name, brat? Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. All right, Midoriya. I have a proposition. A bet. Izuku swallowed hard. A bet? I don't take students. I take risks, Tsunade said. She pointed a manicured nail at his chest. You want my power? You have to survive my training. And let me be clear, when I say survive, I am not speaking metaphorically. People have died trying to keep up with me. I'm not afraid of dying, Izuku said. I'm afraid of living as nothing. Tsunade's eyes softened, just a fraction. Bold words. Let's see if you can back them up. She looked around the destroyed alleyway. She spotted a massive chunk of concrete, a piece of the wall she had demolished. It was roughly the size of a refrigerator. Pick that up, she commanded. Izuku looked at the block. It must have weighed 300 pounds easily. I can't. Not with your muscles, idiot. With your gut. Tsunade walked over and tapped his stomach. Power doesn't come from quirks. It comes from here. Spiritual and physical energy, molded together. We call it chakra. Chakra? Izuku repeated. The word felt ancient on his tongue. It's the energy of life, Shizune explained, stepping forward. In this era, people rely on genetic mutations, quirks. They bypass the need for internal energy control because their bodies do it automatically. But because you're quirkless, your pathways are pure. And used. If we can wake them up, if Tsunade interrupted. Tonight is the test. We're going to the beach. The one filled with garbage. Dagoba Beach? Izuku asked. Is that what it's called? Fitting. Tsunade cracked her knuckles. If you can clear a 10-meter radius of trash by sunrise, moving only what you can carry, without stopping, without water, and without complaining. I'll consider it. 10 meters? Izuku blinked. That sounded manageable. Oh, Tsunade added, her grin widening. And you have to do it while dodging. Dodging what? Tsunade didn't answer. She just flicked her finger against his forehead. The pain was blinding. The next 6 hours were a blur of agony. Dagoba Municipal Beach Park was a graveyard of forgotten things. Tires, refrigerators, broken cars, and mountains of plastic sludge. Under the moonlight, it looked like the end of the world. And in the middle of it, a green blur was screaming, "Move your feet!" Tsunade roared from her perch atop a stack of crushed washing machines. She held a bottle of sake in one hand and a pebble in the other. Zip! The pebble flew through the air with the velocity of a sniper round. Izuku dove to the right, crashing into a pile of wet cardboard. The pebble slammed into the sand where his head had been a second earlier, kicking up a cloud of dust. I'm moving! I'm moving! Izuku gasped, scrambling to his feet. He grabbed a rusted bicycle frame and hauled it toward the designated pile. Too slow. Zip. Zip. 2 more pebbles. One grazed his ear. The other beamed him in the shoulder. Izuku yelped, dropping the bike. Don't drop the cargo. Shizune called out. She was sitting on a clean towel nearby, calmly reading a medical scroll by the light of a lantern. And engage your core, Izuku. You're lifting with your back. I'm trying. Izuku wheezed. His lungs felt like they were filled with broken glass. His uniform was torn to shreds, his arms were covered in scrapes, and he was pretty sure his left pinky toe was broken. He had been at this for hours. Run to the trash pile. Grab something heavy. Run it to the clean zone. Dodge the lethal projectiles Tsunade was launching with terrifying accuracy. You're overthinking it. Tsunade shouted. You're trying to predict where I'm throwing. Don't think. React. Feel the killing intent. Killing intent? Izuku squeaked, ducking under a flying toaster. Tsunade had escalated from pebbles. You're actually trying to kill me? If you die from a toaster, you weren't meant to be my apprentice. Izuku gritted his teeth. He grabbed a car tire. It was heavy, filled with sludge and water. His muscles screamed. Every fiber of his being wanted to collapse. Just stay down, a voice in his head whispered. It's impossible. She's crazy. This isn't training, it's torture. But then he remembered the alleyway. He remembered the feeling of helplessness as the rock fist came down. He remembered Bakugo's laugh. He remembered Tsunade's back as she shielded him. I want to be like that. I won't quit. Izuku roared. He heaved the tire onto his shoulder. He focused not on the pain, but on the goal. 10 meters. He had cleared maybe 6. The sun would be up soon. Tsunade watched him from her perch. Her eyes narrowed. She saw his legs trembling violently. She saw the blood soaking through his sneaker. But he hadn't stopped. He's stubborn, she muttered, taking a swig of sake. He reminds me of you, Shizune said without looking up from her scroll. He reminds me of him, Tsunade corrected softly. Nawaki. And Dan. That stupid, reckless desire to carry the world on their shoulders. Is that a bad thing? It usually gets people killed, Shizune. Tsunade weighed a rock in her hand. It was slightly larger than the others. Let's see if he has the instinct. She didn't throw it to graze him. She threw it directly at his center of mass. It wasn't lethal, but it would break a rib. Izuku was dragging a rusted microwave. He heard the whistle of the air. It was different this time. Louder. Faster. He couldn't dodge. His legs were locked with exhaustion. He was going to get hit. No. Inside Izuku's chest, something flickered. It wasn't a quirk. It was something deeper. A heat in his belly. Move. Just move. He dropped the microwave. Instead of jumping away, he pivoted. He didn't know how he did it, but he slammed his foot into the sand, twisting his hips. He swung his arm out, not to block, but to deflect. His forearm connected with the rock. It hurt like hell. But he didn't absorb the impact, he redirected it. The rock spun off, skittering harmlessly into the ocean. Izuku stood there, panting, his arm throbbing. He stared at his hand. I stopped it. Tsunade lowered her bottle. Her eyes widened. He didn't use a quirk, Shizune gasped, standing up. Did you see that, Lady Tsunade? For a split second, the chakra flow in his arm spiked. Tsunade hopped down from the washing machines. She landed silently on the sand and walked toward Izuku. Izuku flinched, expecting another hit. Tsunade stopped in front of him. She looked at the cleared circle of sand. It was messy, and he had missed a few candy wrappers, but it was done. The horizon was beginning to bleed gray and pink. Time's up, she said. Izuku fell to his knees. I did it. I cleared the circle. You missed a spot, Tsunade said, pointing to a crushed soda can. Izuku's face fell. But Tsunade interrupted, a small smile playing on her lips. You didn't die. And you deflected that last shot. That wasn't luck. She reached into her haori and pulled out a small, green pendant necklace. It was a crystal, glowing faintly in the dawn light. This, she said, dangling it in front of him, belonged to my grandfather. He was a god among men. He built a village from nothing. Izuku stared at the crystal. Who was he? Hashirama Senju, Tsunade said. The first Hokage. She put the necklace back in her pocket. You're not ready for that yet. But you earned breakfast. Izuku blinked. Breakfast? I won the bet, Tsunade said, grinning. Technically. You missed the soda can. so you owe me. You belong to me now, Green Bean. Izuku felt a wave of relief so strong it made him dizzy. You mean? I mean, get up, Tsunade commanded. We have a lot of work to do. Shizune, heel his toe. Then we're going to the library? If I'm going to teach him, he needs to know the anatomy of the human body better than he knows those stupid hero statistics. Yes, ma'am. Shizune beamed, rushing over to Izuku. Her hands glowed with a soft green light, the mystical palm technique. As she hovered them over Izuku's foot, the pain vanished instantly, replaced by a soothing coolness. Izuku watched, mesmerized. Can I learn that too? Medical ninjutsu is the hardest of all the arts, Tsunade said, crossing her arms. It requires perfect chakra control. One slip up, and instead of healing a patient you kill them. She leaned in close, her expression serious. Listen to me, Izuku. The path you are asking for, it isn't the path of a hero. Heroes pose for cameras. They rely on flashy quirks. We are shinobi. We operate in the shadows. We are medics. We hold life and death in our hands. She poked him in the chest. I will break you. I will shatter your bones and rebuild them harder. I will make you read until your eyes bleed and train until you vomit blood. And at the end of it, you won't just be a hero. You'll be a monster. Tsunade extended her hand. Still want to make that bet? Izuku looked at her hand. He looked at the sunrise over the trash-filled beach. He thought of All Might. He thought of Bakugo. He reached out and grasped her hand. His grip was weak, but his eyes were burning. Yes, Shursho, Tsunade grinned. It was a terrifying, predatory, beautiful grin. Good answer. Now, pick up that microwave and follow me. We're going to get some ramen. Ramen for breakfast? Shizune sighed. Shut up, Shizune. It's a celebration. As they walked away from the beach, leaving the carnage of the night's training behind them, Izuku Midoriya took his first step onto a new path. He didn't know about the wars of the past, or the legacy of the Sannin, or the terrifying power of the Slug Princess. All he knew was that for the first time in his life, he wasn't walking alone. And somewhere, deep in his gut, a small, dormant spark of blue energy began to swirl. Omake, the notebook. Later that day, inside a cheap motel room, Tsunade was flipping through Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. This kid has issues, she muttered, reading a page dedicated to Empty Lady. Look at this. He calculated her center of gravity and the sheer stress her ankles take when she grows. He even noted that if you sweep the leg at a 45-degree angle, she'd topple like a domino. Shizune looked over her shoulder while applying a poultice to a sleeping Izuku's bruised arms. He's analytical. That's good for a medic. It's creepy, Tsunade said. She flipped to the page on All Might. But accurate. He notes here that All Might favors his right side during punches, leaving his left flank exposed for 0.4 seconds. Tsunade closed the book and looked at the sleeping boy. If we give him the strength to exploit those weaknesses, this kid is going to be terrifying. Isn't that the point? Shizune asked. Tsunade smirked, taking a sip of sake. Yeah. It is. I can't wait to see the look on the pro heroes' faces when a quirkless kid punches a hole through their rankings. She patted the notebook. Sleep well, Green Bean. Tomorrow, we start with chakra meditation. If you fall asleep during that, I'm throwing a shoe at you. The alarm clock didn't get a chance to ring. At 3:59 a.m., a hand wrapped in bandages slammed down onto the button, silencing the device before it could disturb the silence of the Midoriya apartment. Izuku Midoriya lay in bed for exactly 3 seconds, staring at the ceiling. His body felt like it had been dismantled, run through a trash compactor, and then hastily reassembled by someone who had lost the instructions. His pectorals burned. His quads felt like lead. Even his eyelids felt heavy, weighed down by a fatigue so profound it settled into his marrow. Get up, he told himself. If you're late, she adds another 10 kilometers. With a groan that sounded more like a zombie's rattle, Izuku rolled out of bed. He hit the floor with a thud, his legs wobbling as they took his weight. He was 12 years old, but his joints creaked like an old man's. He crept out of his room, careful not to wake his mother. Inko Midoriya had been worried sick lately. Her son was coming home covered in bruises, smelling of dirt and sweat, and falling asleep at the dinner table. He had told her he was doing intensive prep for UA with a private tutor. It wasn't a lie, technically. It just omitted the part where the tutor was a legendary, functional alcoholic with a temper shorter than a fuse on a stick of dynamite. Izuku grabbed a protein bar from the kitchen, something Shizune had insisted on, and slipped out the front door into the pre-dawn darkness. The cool air of Mizurufa hit his face, waking him up slightly. He began to jog. Not a normal jog, but the Senju shuffle as Tsunade called it. Knees high, core engaged, breathing in a specific 4-7-8 rhythm. His destination was an abandoned quarry on the outskirts of the city, a place where illegal dumping had once occurred and where construction projects had stalled years ago. It was isolated, rocky, and dangerous, perfect for Tsunade. As he ran, Izuku's mind drifted to the past 6 months. It had been half a year since that night in the alleyway. Half a year since he sold his soul to the Slug Princess. He thought he knew what hard work was. He thought taking notes and analyzing heroes was dedication. He was wrong. The classroom of poison. The quarry was silent when he arrived, save for the chirping of crickets. A small campfire was crackling near the entrance of a shallow cave, casting dancing shadows against the rock walls. Shizune was already there. She looked remarkably fresh compared to Izuku, wearing her standard dark kimono-style blouse, her glasses reflecting the firelight. Beside her sat Taunton the pig, happily munching on an apple. "Good morning, Izuku," Shizune said pleasantly, not looking up from the thick scroll she was reading. "You're 30 seconds early." "Good. Punctuality is the first step in medicine. If you're late to surgery, the patient dies." "Good morning, Shizune-san," Izuku wheezed, collapsing onto a log. Is she here?" "Lady Tsunade is sleeping off a hangover," Shizune said with a practiced sigh. "She won't be up until noon." "Which means the morning block is mine," Izuku gulped. In some ways, Shizune was scarier than Tsunade. Tsunade would punch you through a wall, which hurt, but it was simple. Shizune attacked your brain. She reached into a satchel and pulled out a stack of books. They weren't standard textbooks. They were old, bound in leather that looked suspiciously like cured hide, with titles handwritten in archaic kanji. "Today, we move on from the skeletal system," Shizune announced. "We are starting toxicology and the nervous system." She threw a book at him. He caught it, wincing as the corner dug into his bruised palm. "The Encyclopedia of Flora and Venom, Eastern Continent Edition. Open to page 394, Shizune commanded. "Wolfsbane. Aconite. Read it." Izuku opened the book. The illustrations were hand-drawn and incredibly detailed. Aconitum contains aconitine, a potent neurotoxin that opens tetrodotoxin-sensitive sodium channels. "Skip the chemistry, get to the symptoms," Shizune snapped, her voice sharpening. "You're in the field. Your teammate collapses. He's foaming at the mouth, pupils dilated, heart rate erratic. What do you do?" Izuku frantically scanned the page. "Induce vomiting? Wrong. If he's already foaming, the toxin is in the bloodstream. Vomiting will just cause aspiration pneumonia. You need to administer a sodium channel blocker and stabilize the heart rhythm. What herb provides the counteragent?" "I don't know." "Then he's dead," Shizune said coldly. "Bakugo?" "Dead." "Your mother?" "Dead." "All Might?" "Dead." Izuku flinched at each name. "Medical ninjutsu isn't magic, Izuku," Shizune said, her voice softening but losing none of its intensity. "It is the manipulation of biology. To manipulate it, you must understand it better than you understand your own name. You have a habit of analyzing heroes, right? You write down their quirks, their moves, their costumes." "Yes," Izuku whispered. "That's a hobby. This," she tapped the book, "is survival. I want you to change how you see people. Don't look at a villain and see fire quirk. Look at them and see the sternocleidomastoid muscle protecting the jugular. Look at them and see the liver exposed when they raise their right arm. Look at them and see a bag of blood and electricity that can be disrupted." She handed him a notebook. It was blank, save for the first page where she had written, "Target analysis. Biological weak points." "Fill this," she ordered. "By next week, I want 10 pages on the vulnerability of the human nervous system." "Yes, Shizune-san." "Good. Now quiz time. I'm going to list symptoms. You tell me the poison. If you get it wrong. She smiled, and for a second, she looked exactly like Tsunade. Add 5 pounds to your weighted vest for the afternoon session, but I'm already wearing 20 pounds. Nausea, vertigo, cherry red skin discoloration, Shizune recited rapidly. Carbon monoxide. Izuku shouted. Correct. Muscle spasms, lockjaw, arching of the back. Tetanus. Correct. Paralysis starting from the legs moving upward, respiratory failure, bite mark. Crite snake venom. Wrong. That's a neurotoxic cobra. Crite venom has a delayed onset. Add 5 pounds. Izuku groaned, burying his face in the book. This was going to be a long morning, the physical hell. By the time the sun was high in the sky, baking the rocks of the quarry, Izuku's brain felt like mush. He had memorized 20 different types of neurotoxins, and the exact psi required to shatter a clavicle. Then, the ground shook. A massive boulder, easily the size of a small car, exploded near the entrance of the cave. Dust billowed out, coating Izuku and Shizune. I'm awake! A voice roared. Tsunade Senju stepped out of the dust cloud, stretching her arms. She looked grumpy, her hair slightly disheveled. She wore her usual gray kimono top and dark pants, the green gamble haori draped over her shoulders. Water, she barked. Izuku scrambled to grab a canteen and ran it over to her. She downed the whole thing in one gulp and wiped her mouth. All right, brat. Shizune says you didn't fail the written test completely? That's boring. She looked him up and down. You look tired. I'm okay, Izuku lied, his legs trembling under the extra weights in his vest. Liar, Tsunade grinned. Good. Tired means your muscles are tearing. And when they tear, they grow back stronger. That is, if you have the energy to heal them. She walked to the center of the quarry. Lesson 2, Evasion. We did evasion yesterday, Izuku protested. And the day before. And last week. And you still get hit, Tsunade pointed out. In a real fight, as a medic, you are the primary target. If the healer goes down, the squad goes down. Rule number 1 of medical ninjutsu. A medic ninja must never die. Rule number 2, she continued, holding up 2 fingers. A medic ninja must never get into a fight on the front lines. Izuku blinked. But you fight on the front lines. You destroyed that alleyway. Tsunade said, cracking her knuckles, and the exception. Rule number 3, a medic ninja must be the last one standing. And rule number 4, well, you're not ready for the creation rebirth. So stick to rule 1. Don't die. She bent down and picked up a handful of gravel. Today, we add a variable. Chakra. Izuku perked up. Chakra? Am I finally going to learn a jutsu? No, Tsunade laughed. I'm going to use chakra. You're going to try not to become Swiss cheese. Before Izuku could process that, Tsunade flicked her wrist. It wasn't a throw. It was a flick. But she channeled chakra into her thumb and forefinger, releasing it at the moment of impact. Boom! The air cracked. A single pebble broke the sound barrier. It whizzed past Izuku's ear, the wind pressure cutting a small line on his cheek. It hit the rock wall behind him and embedded itself 3 inches deep. Izuku turned pale. That was a rock. Chakra-enhanced strength, Tsunade lectured, picking up another pebble. I concentrate chakra to the point of contact and release it instantly. Maximum destruction, minimum effort. If one of these hits you, it will break bone. If it hits your head, you die. Wait. Isn't this too extreme? Move. She flicked another. Izuku threw himself to the dirt. The pebble pulverized a log next to him. Get up. Don't roll around in the dirt like a worm. Keep your footing. Izuku scrambled up, adrenaline flooding his system. He watched her hand. He had to predict the flick. Snap. He dodged left. The rock grazed his shoulder. Pain exploded, but he kept moving. Better! Tsunade yelled. But you're reacting to the motion. You need to react to the intent. Read my body language. Where is my weight shifting? Where are my eyes looking? For the next hour, Izuku danced with death. He was cut, bruised, and covered in dust. He learned quickly that Tsunade telegraphed her shots ever so slightly. A tightening of her jaw, a shift in her stance. He began to enter a flow state. The hero analysis brain that Shizune was trying to repurpose kicked in. Right shoulder drop. Trajectory, lower left. Jump, he leaped over a rock bullet, eyes narrowed. 2 fingers. Double shot, he ducked and rolled. Not bad, Tsunade muttered. She dropped the gravel. Okay, warm up over. Izuku collapsed, gasping for air. Warm up? Now comes the hard part, Tsunade said. She walked over and sat down cross-legged in front of him. Sit. Izuku sat, mirroring her. Close your eyes. He obeyed. You've been training physically for 6 months. Your body is changing. You're eating the diet Shizune prepared. You're stronger. But you're still empty. Tsunade's voice dropped an octave, becoming serious. In this world, people have quirks. Their bodies are evolved to channel specific types of energy. You don't have that. You are a blank slate. An evolutionary dead end, according to your doctors. I know, Izuku whispered. Wrong, Tsunade snapped. You're not a dead end. You're a throwback. A vessel waiting to be filled. Chakra is the combination of physical energy, collected from your body cells, and spiritual energy, derived from your consciousness and experience. She placed a hand on his stomach. You have the physical energy now. You're fit. But your spiritual energy? It's chaotic. You're anxious. You're scared. You're overthinking. How do I fix it? Find the center, Tsunade commanded. Imagine a flame in your belly. Feed it with your stamina. Feed it with your will. Don't try to force it out like a quirk. Pull it in. Izuku frowned, concentrating. He tried to visualize the flame. He thought about the diagram and the scrolls Shizune had shown him. The coil system. He searched for the sensation. He strained. He clenched his muscles until he was shaking. Relax? Tsunade slapped his shoulder. You're trying to poop, not mold chakra. It's not a muscle contraction. It's a flow. Like blood. Izuku tried again. He sat there for an hour. Then 2. The sun beat down on him. His legs went numb. Nothing. He felt tired. He felt hungry. But he didn't feel any magic energy. I don't feel it, he said, opening his eyes, frustration leaking into his voice. I don't feel anything. Maybe the doctor was right. Maybe I just don't have it. Tsunade looked at him. She didn't scold him this time. She looked almost contemplative. It's harder for you, she admitted. For a shinobi from my land, chakra pathways are active from birth. For you, we have to carve them out of nothing. It's like trying to dig a riverbed through solid rock. She stood up. Keep trying. Visualize the flow. We're not leaving until you produce a spark. The wall. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The routine was brutal. Morning, anatomy and poison with Shizune. Afternoon, evasion and strength training with Tsunade. Evening, meditation. Izuku Midoriya was changing. The baby fat was gone, replaced by lean, whipcord muscle. His hands were calloused. His eyes, once constantly wide with fear, had grown sharper, more observant. At school, he had stopped flinching when Bakugo yelled. In fact, one day, when Bakugo had tried to grab his collar, Izuku had simply slapped the hand away before he even realized he'd done it. Bakugo had been too shocked to retaliate, and Izuku had walked away before the explosion came. But the chakra was a wall he couldn't break. He sat under the waterfall in the quarry. Tsunade had insisted the cold water helped focus. He sat in the closet at home. He sat on the roof of the school. He tried to combine his physical exhaustion with his mental drive. He poured every ounce of his desire to be a hero into the void of his stomach, but it remained a void. Maybe he can't do it, he heard Shizune whisper one night. He was feigning sleep in the corner of the warehouse they were using as a temporary base. Lady Tsunade, his physiology is 100% human of this era. Maybe the pathways just aren't there. They're there. Tsunade's voice was slurred. She was drinking again. I can sense the potential. It's dense. It's heavy. It's just locked. He needs a trigger. He's been trying for 8 months. The entrance exam is in 2 years. If he doesn't unlock chakra soon, he won't have time to learn the techniques. He'll do it, Tsunade said. but her voice lacked its usual conviction. Izuku lay in the dark, clutching his blanket. Tears pricked his eyes. I'm failing them. I'm wasting their time. He rolled over, looking at his hand in the dark. I'm still Deku. The vertical ascent. 2 days later. It was raining. A torrential downpour that turned the quarry into a mud pit. Go home, kid, Tsunade said, standing under an umbrella held by Shizune. It's too wet to train. You'll slip and break your neck. Izuku stood in the middle of the mud. He was soaked to the bone. His hair was plastered to his forehead. No, Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Excuse me? I'm not going home, Izuku said. He pointed to a massive tree that grew out of the side of the quarry wall. It was an ancient oak, its trunk thick and gnarled, rising 30 feet into the air. You told me the first Hokage could grow forests, Izuku shouted over the rain. You told me chakra connects us to nature. If I can't even climb a tree, how can I be a hero? Climbing a tree with your hands is physical, Tsunade said. We've done that. No, Izuku shook his head. Without hands. Tsunade's eyes narrowed. Tree climbing practice? You don't even have a flow yet. I have to try. Izuku yelled. I'm sick of waiting. I'm sick of meditating. I need to do something. He turned and ran at the tree. He didn't know what he was doing. He just screamed, a primal sound of frustration and desire. He focused on the soles of his feet. He imagined the energy he had been trying to find for months. He didn't try to gently mold it. He tried to shove it down his legs like a piston. Connect. His foot hit the bark. Usually, he would slip. This time, for a fraction of a second, he felt it. A magnetic pull. A grip. He took a step. Crunch. The bark exploded under his foot. He had used too much force. He flew backward, landing hard in the mud. Oof. He lay there, staring at the rain. Did you see that? Shizune whispered. Tsunade dropped her sake bottle. It didn't break in the mud. He crushed the bark. Izuku scrambled up. He didn't care about the mud. He looked at the tree. There was a footprint. A distinct, indented footprint where the wood had been pulverized not by impact, but by pressure. I felt it, Izuku gasped. I felt heat. In my feet. You used too much, Tsunade barked, stepping forward, her umbrella discarded. You pushed the chakra out like a cannonball. It needs to be a suction cup. Just enough to stick, not enough to break. Again. Izuku yelled. He ran. Step 1. Stick. Step 2. Stick. Step 3 slip. He fell, hitting the ground with a wet thud. Again, he ran. Step 1. Stick. Step 2. Stick. Step 3. Stick. Step 4 crack. Too much power. He backflipped off the trunk to avoid falling on his head. Again, the rain intensified. Shizune watched with her hands over her mouth. Tsunade stood with her arms crossed, water dripping from her nose, her eyes locked on the boy. He fell 10 times. 20 times. 50 times. He was bleeding now. He had cut his head on a root. His chakra reserves, newly awakened and volatile, were sputtering. Izuku, stop! Shizune cried out. You'll exhaust your life force. You're not used to this drain. I can't make it. Izuku panted. He was swaying. I have to get to the first branch. He looked at the branch. It was 15 feet up. He closed his eyes. He stopped screaming. He remembered Shizune's lessons on anatomy. Control. Precision. He remembered Tsunade's lessons on strength. Power. Intent. He didn't need to be a cannon. He didn't need to be a feather. He needed to be the tree. Flow. He opened his eyes. They glowed with a faint, almost imperceptible blue shimmer. He ran. His left foot hit the trunk. Stick. Right foot. Stick. He wasn't running up the tree anymore. He was walking. Perpendicular to the ground. Defying gravity. Defying biology. Defying the logic of a quirkless world. Step. 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 He passed the mark where he had fallen before. He kept going. 10 feet. 12 feet. He reached the branch. He didn't stop. He walked on to the underside of the branch, hanging upside down like a bat. He looked down. The world looked different from here. The rain seemed to slow down. He could see Tsunade and Shizune looking up at him. Izuku smiled, blood running down his forehead. I did it, Shusho. Then, his chakra control snapped. Gravity reclaimed him. He fell. Tsunade moved. She didn't use a flicker. She just stepped, caught him in her arms before he hit the ground, and absorbed the impact with her knees. Izuku was unconscious before he landed in her arms. Tsunade looked down at the boy. He was light, but he felt heavy with potential. She brushed the wet hair out of his face. You show off, she whispered. She looked at the tree. The footprints were perfect. A straight line of crushed bark leading all the way up. He bypassed the leaf-sticking exercise entirely, Shizune said, running over, checking Izuku's pulse. He went straight to surface walking. His chakra density is absurd. He's an Uzumaki, Tsunade muttered, a joke that Shizune didn't quite get. Or he has the spirit of one. Stubborn. Reckless. And overflowing with energy. Tsunade hoisted Izuku onto her back. Let's get him home. Tomorrow, the real training begins. The broken wing. The breakthrough changed everything. Once the dam was broken, the water flowed. Izuku didn't just have chakra. He had a lot of it. It made sense, Tsunade reasoned. For generations, his ancestors had quirks. His mother had telekinesis. His father breathed fire. All that genetic energy, having nowhere to go in a quirkless body, had compounded into a massive reservoir of spiritual and physical stamina. Now that he could tap into it, he was a battery. A week later, Izuku was in the park near his house. It was a rest day, meaning he only had to read 3 books and do 500 push-ups. He was sitting on a bench, reading Advanced Cellular Regeneration, when he heard a rustle in the bushes. He knelt down and pushed the leaves aside. A pigeon was thrashing on the ground. Its wing was bent at a sickening angle, likely hit by a bicycle or a stray ball. Hey there, little guy, Izuku whispered. Normally, he would have panicked. He would have looked for a hero. He would have tried to find a vet. But he looked at the bird, and his mind shifted. He didn't see a dying animal. He saw a humerus bone fractured midshaft. He saw torn ligaments. He saw the circulatory system in distress. I can fix this. He looked around. The park was empty. Okay, Izuku breathed. Shizune showed me the theory. Tsunade showed me the control. He cupped his hands over the bird. Focus. Not destruction. Creation. He closed his eyes. He searched for that flame in his belly. But instead of pushing it into his feet to crush bark, he guided it to his palms. He imagined the energy turning soft, warm, green. Cellular activation. Stimulate the mitosis. Knit the bone. Ahum. Izuku opened his eyes. His hands were glowing. It wasn't the bright, steady neon green of Shizune's technique. It was pale, flickering like a dying light bulb. It sputtered and sparked, steadied. He gritted his teeth. Sweat beaded on his forehead. This was infinitely harder than climbing a tree. This required finesse. The bird stopped thrashing. The warmth seemed to calm it. Izuku watched as the feathers rearranged themselves. He could feel the bones shifting under the skin, responding to the chakra. Click, the bones set. The inflammation receded. The light in Izuku's hands died out, and he slumped back against the bench, panting as if he'd run a marathon. The pigeon blinked. It stood up, shook its feathers, and stretched its wing. It wasn't perfect. It was still a bit stiff, but it was whole. The bird looked at Izuku for a moment, then flapped its wings and took off, soaring into the blue sky. Izuku watched it go. He looked at his hands. They were trembling. He had saved it. He hadn't punched a villain. He hadn't used a smash. He had used his own power to heal a living thing. A tear rolled down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away, pulling out his notebook, the one Shizune gave him. He opened it to a new page. Subject: Mystical Palm Technique, Attempt 1. Result: Success partial. Notes: Chakra consumption is high. Focus wavered. Need to improve efficiency. But it works. I can do it. He closed the book and stood up. He felt different. He walked differently. The hunch in his shoulders was gone. He wasn't just Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless kid anymore. He was the apprentice of the legendary Sannin. And he had a lot of work to do. "Oh, make the report card, Midoriya," the homeroom teacher said, handing back the biology test. Izuku took the paper. 100/100. The teacher adjusted his glasses. "I must say, Midoriya, your answers were incredibly detailed. Although, for the question about what happens when adrenaline enters the bloodstream, you didn't need to describe the chemical formula for adrenaline or the exact millisecond response time of the adrenal gland." "Sorry, sensei," Izuku muttered, scratching his head. Force of habit. Bakugo, sitting a few desks away, snatched the paper from Izuku's hand. He stared at the perfect score. "Ha! Since when are you a genius, Deku?" Izuku gently took the paper back. He didn't flinch. He didn't stutter. "Since I started studying for real, Kaken," Bakugo frowned. He looked at Izuku's hands. They were covered in small cuts and calluses. He smelled faintly of antiseptic and sake? "Whatever," Bakugo scoffed, turning away. "You're still a pebble on the side of the road." Izuku smiled to himself. A pebble that can shatter a boulder, he thought. He put the test in his bag, right next to the Encyclopedia of Lethal Poisons. The second year of Izuku Midoriya's apprenticeship did not begin with a bang, nor a whimper. It began with the sound of a bone fracturing, specifically, the third metacarpal in his right hand. "Again," Tsunade said. She didn't look up from her magazine. She was sitting on a folding chair in the middle of a dense, wooded training ground they had commandeered north of Muzurifu. A bottle of premium sake sat by her foot, condensation dripping down the glass in the humid summer heat. Izuku stood before a massive oak tree. The trunk was wrapped in thick layers of rope and rubber, but beneath that padding, the wood was unforgivingly hard. Izuku was 14 now. The baby fat that had once rounded his cheeks had evaporated, burned away by the hellfire of Tsunade's regimen. He stood taller, his posture straight as a rod. His arms were wrapped in white bandages that extended from his knuckles to his elbows, stained with sweat and dirt. He looked at his hand. It was throbbing. A dull, rhythmic ache that synced with his heartbeat. "My spacing was off," Izuku muttered, more to himself than to his master. "I released the chakra too early." The kinetic energy dispersed before the point of impact, resulting in a surface-level bruise rather than internal destruction. "Stop muttering and heal it," Tsunade ordered, turning a page. "Then hit it again." Izuku sighed. He held his left hand over his right. A pale, sea-green light flickered into existence, the mystical palm technique. It was stronger now than it had been a year ago. The light was steadier, the hum of energy more consistent. He felt the bone knit together, the calcium deposits accelerating, the inflammation receding. It took 30 seconds. In the medical world, that was a miracle. To Tsunade, it was sluggish. "Done," Izuku said, flexing his fingers. "The principle of Shinero, chakra-enhanced strength, is binary," Tsunade lectured, finally looking at him. Her amber eyes bored into him. "It is 0, then it is 100. There is no 50. You gather the chakra at the fist. You hold it. You compress it until it screams to be let out. And the millisecond your skin touches the target, you detonate." She stood up. The air around her seemed to grow heavy. "Show me the detonation, Izuku." "Don't push the tree. Kill the tree." Izuku nodded. He spread his feet shoulder-width apart. He took a deep breath, visualizing the flame in his stomach. By now, the chakra came easier. It wasn't a trickle anymore. It was a steady stream. He channeled it to his right fist. He felt the pressure building. It felt like holding a grenade with the pin pulled. His veins bulged slightly against the bandages. Wait for it. He stepped in. His hip twisted, generating torque. His fist flew forward. Now. Smash! His fist connected. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot. Wood chips exploded outward like shrapnel. The rubber padding disintegrated. The tree groaned, a deep, mournful sound, and a massive fissure shot up the trunk, splitting the bark 10 feet high. Izuku pulled his hand back. Smoke, actual steam from the friction and chakra release, curled off his knuckles. Tsunade inspected the damage. She poked the fissure. "Better," she grunted. "You got the timing right. But you're still hesitating at the very end. You're afraid of the recoil." Newton's third law, Izuku said, rubbing his wrist. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If I hit it harder, the force traveling back up my arm could shatter my humerus. That's why you coat your arm in chakra to reinforce the bone density, you nerd. Tsunade flicked his forehead. The impact sent him stumbling back 3 steps. You can't apply real-world physics to shinobi arts. We cheat physics. That's the job. She walked back to her chair. Take 5. Shizune is bringing lunch. If you analyze the nutritional content of the rice balls out loud again, I'm doubling your evasion drills. Izuku smiled weakly. Yes, Shursho. He sat down on the grass, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at the tree. He had nearly split a 100-year-old oak in half with his bare hand. 2 years ago, he couldn't even do a pull-up. I'm getting there, he thought. I'm not All Might yet. But I'm not helpless. The art of evasion, or running for your life. The dynamic between Izuku and his masters had settled into a chaotic, terrifying rhythm. Shizune was the mother hen who also knew 17 ways to stop a human heart. Tsunade was the chaotic force of nature who taught him how to survive disasters by being the disaster. But the most important lesson of Year 2 wasn't strength. It was survival. A dead medic is a useless medic, was the mantra. And nothing tested that mantra quite like the incident with the sake cup. It happened 3 weeks later. They were at their temporary residence, a small, rented house on the edge of the city. Tsunade was in a rare good mood. She had won a small fortune at the local pachinko parlor, a sign of impending doom, usually, but she ignored it, and had purchased a bottle of extremely rare, aged Daijinjo sake. To drink it, she had brought out her most prized possession, a delicate, hand-painted ceramic cup from the Edo period. Beautiful, isn't it? Tsunade cooed, holding the cup up to the light. The craftsmanship. The history. It's very nice, Shursho, Izuku said. He was in the middle of the living room, doing one-fingered handstand push-ups while reading a textbook on toxic alkaloids on the floor. Careful, Lady Tsunade, Shizune warned from the kitchen where she was chopping vegetables. That cup is priceless. And you've already had 3 bottles. I'm fine, Tsunade dismissed her. Izuku, catch! She tossed a peanut at him. It was a test. Always a test. Izuku, upside down, saw the peanut coming. He had to react. He pushed off his finger, flipping in the air to catch the peanut in his mouth. It was a graceful maneuver. Perfect acrobatic form. Unfortunately, his foot caught the edge of the low table. The table wobbled. The bottle of sake tipped over. Tsunade lunged for the bottle. My booze! She saved the bottle. But in doing so, her elbow bumped the priceless Edo period cup. Time seemed to slow down. Izuku watched in horror as the cup spun off the edge of the table. He was mid-air, coming down from his flip. He reached out, his fingers brushing the ceramic. Chakra control. Stick to it. He tried to use the surface adhesion technique. But in his panic, he used too much. Snap. Instead of catching the cup, the force of his chakra crushed it instantly into fine white powder. Izuku landed on his feet. He opened his hand. A pile of ceramic dust poured out onto the tatami mat. Silence descended on the house. Shizune stopped chopping vegetables. Taunton the pig stopped eating. The birds outside stopped chirping. Tsunade slowly set the bottle down. She looked at the dust. Then she looked at Izuku. A dark purple aura began to radiate from her body. Her hair floated slightly, defying gravity. The kanji 4 gamble on her back seemed to glow red. Izuku. She whispered. The sound was like tectonic plates grinding together. I can fix it? Izuku squeaked. I have glue. I have really good glue. You pulverized it, Tsunade said. Her fist clenched. The air pressure in the room dropped. That cup survived 3 wars. It survived the Great Fire. It survived me. Run, Shizune mouthed from the kitchen. Run now. Izuku didn't need telling twice. He burst through the sliding glass door into the backyard just as Tsunade's fist demolished the living room wall. Come back here, you brat! The chase was on. This wasn't a jog. This was high-stakes parkour with a homing missile chasing him. Izuku sprinted through the neighborhood, vaulting over fences, leaping across gaps between houses. Think! Izuku's mind raced as he bounded off a garden shed. She has superior speed and strength. On the ground, she catches me in 10 seconds. I need verticality and obstacles to break her line of sight. He channeled chakra into his feet and ran straight up the side of a 4-story apartment complex. Boom! A chunk of asphalt the size of a microwave flew past his head, taking out a satellite dish. I can hear you breathing, Izuku! Tsunade roared from the alley below. She leaped, clearing the entire building in a single bound. Izuku shrieked and dove into a roll across the roof. He didn't look back, he just kept moving. He used the evasion techniques she had beaten into him. Unpredictable movement. Don't run in a straight line, he zigzagged. He used clotheslines to swing around corners. He used the chimney as a pivot point to change direction mid-air. He was terrified, yes. But underneath the terror, he was operating at peak efficiency. His heart rate was elevated but steady. His chakra flow was smooth. He was unconsciously scanning the environment for threats and escapes, processing the geometry of the city at a speed that would have made a pro-hero jealous. Tsunade landed on the roof, shattering the tiles. She looked around, her eyes wild. Where did you go, you little cockroach? Izuku was hiding inside a water tower, clinging to the inside ceiling using his feet, holding his breath. He had phased into the environment. Tsunade sniffed the air. Then, surprisingly, she smirked. Not bad, she muttered. You masked your scent with the stagnant water. And you're suppressing your chakra signature. She turned and leaped away, pretending to hunt elsewhere. Izuku waited a full 10 minutes before dropping down. He was trembling. I survived, he whispered. I actually survived. It was the best evasion training of his life. Although he did have to spend the next 3 months doing chores to pay for the cup. The sludge villain, alternate, the seasons changed. Winter came and went. Izuku's 3rd year of training began. He was walking through the shopping district of Muzudafu. It was a rare afternoon off. Shizune had sent him to pick up medical supplies, gauze, antiseptic, and specific herbs that were hard to find. He wore his standard green tracksuit, now slightly worn at the knees and elbows. His red shoes were scuffed. He carried a yellow backpack. He looked normal. But he didn't feel normal. As he walked, he analyzed the people around him. Man on the left, slight limp, favoring right knee. Probably an old meniscus tear. Woman on the right, pale complexion, slight tremor in hands. Hypoglycemia? No, likely caffeine withdrawal based on the empty latte cup. It was annoying, honestly. He couldn't turn it off. Then, he heard the explosion. It wasn't far. 2 blocks over. Smoke billowed into the sky, thick and black. The crowd began to run. Not away, but toward it. The bystander effect. People wanted to see the hero's work. Izuku hesitated. Tsunade said to stay low. Don't get involved. I'm not a licensed hero. But his feet were already moving. He pushed through the crowd. Excuse me? Coming through. Medical emergency. He reached the police barricade. The scene was chaos. An alleyway was engulfed in flames. Pro-heroes were standing around, looking helpless. Death Arms was shouting. I can't get close. The heat is too intense. Kamui Woods was useless near the fire. Empty Lady couldn't fit in the alley. And in the center of the inferno, a monster made of sludge held a hostage. Izuku squinted. The smoke was stinging his eyes, but he focused. Hostage secured by fluid envelopment. The villain is using the victim's quirk to cause the explosions. Wait, he saw the blonde hair. He saw the terrified, angry red eyes. Kaken. Izuku's heart stopped. Bakugo was struggling. He was suffocating. The sludge was forcing its way into his mouth and nose. The heroes were just watching. Waiting for someone with the right quirk to show up. They're waiting, Izuku realized. They're waiting for a matchup. But he's dying right now. Hypoxia sets in within minutes. Brain damage follows. Tsunade's voice echoed in his head. Rule number 1. A medic must never die. But, rule number 0. You don't let the patient die either. Izuku dropped his grocery bags. He didn't scream. He didn't announce his presence. He simply launched. He cleared the police barricade in a single, chakra-enhanced leap. Hey! Kid! Stop! Death Arms yelled. Izuku ignored him. He landed in the middle of the burning street. The heat was intense, but Izuku had spent hours meditating next to blast furnaces to improve his concentration. The sludge villain saw him. Another hero? No. Just a kid? A plain-looking kid? Get lost. I'll kill you! The villain lashed out with a tendril of sludge. It moved fast, like a whip. Izuku didn't flinch. He saw the muscle contraction, or whatever passed for muscles in a fluid body, before the strike happened. Duck. Izuku slid under the tendril, the asphalt scraping his knees. He popped up 3 meters from the villain. Bakugo's eyes locked onto him. Recognition flashed through the panic. Deku, what are you doing here? The villain roared. You want to die? Let him go, Izuku said calmly. His voice wasn't shaky. It was the clinical voice Shizune used when a patient was panicking. Die. The villain swung a massive arm of sludge to crush him. Izuku took a breath. Anatomy of a slime. Viscosity is high. Surface tension is high. Physical blows will be absorbed, unless I sever the control. Izuku's hands began to glow. But this wasn't the warm green light of healing. It was blue. Sharp. Buzzing like a circular saw. Chakra scalpel. It was a technique Shizune had forbidden him from using in sparring because it was too dangerous. It turned chakra into a blade that could cut muscles without breaking the skin. Izuku charged. You idiot! The villain laughed, bracing for impact. I'm made of fluid. You can't hurt me. Izuku dodged a second explosion from Bakugo's uncontrolled quirk. He closed the distance. I don't need to hurt you, Izuku muttered. I just need to disconnect you. He didn't punch the villain. He thrust his open palms directly into the sludge, aiming for where the villain's eyes and mouth connected to the main mass. Chakra scalpel, sever? Izuku flooded the sludge with disruptive chakra. The villain screamed. It wasn't pain, it was a sudden loss of motor function. The chakra blade sliced through the cohesive forces holding the slime together. My control. I can't hold my shape. The sludge began to lose consistency. It turned from thick tar into watery muck. Bakugo gasped, his mouth suddenly free. He coughed violently, inhaling sweet oxygen. Kaken! Breathe! Izuku commanded, but the villain wasn't done. Desperate, the main body of the sludge tried to reform, lashing out to engulf both of them. I'll take your body instead. The villain shrieked, looming over Izuku. Izuku stood in front of Bakugo. He looked at the wall of slime coming down. Scalpel won't work on a mass attack. I need displacement. He clenched his right fist. He remembered the tree. He remembered the feeling of the explosion. Don't hesitate. Detonate. Shinero. Izuku punched the air. He didn't hit the villain directly. He hit the air pressure immediately in front of the sludge wave. The impact was thunderous. The wind pressure generated by the chakra-enhanced strength created a vacuum, then a blast wave. Boom! The sludge was blasted backward, splattering against the burning buildings like paint. The fire in the alley was momentarily snuffed out by the sheer force of the wind. Silence fell over the street. Izuku stood there, his fists still extended. His knuckles were smoking. Bakugo sat on the ground, staring up at Izuku. His eyes were wide, his pupils trembling. Deku. He rasped. Since when, do you have a quirk? Izuku lowered his hand. He looked at Bakugo. Are you okay? Any dizziness? Nausea? Answer me. Bakugo yelled, though his voice was weak. Before Izuku could answer, the pros snapped out of their stupor. Secure the villain! Kamui shouted. Get the kids! Death Arms rushed forward. Izuku took a step back. The adrenaline was fading. He realized what he had done. He had used techniques in public. He had acted as a vigilante. Tsunade is going to kill me, young man. Death Arms grabbed Izuku's shoulder. That was incredibly dangerous. You could have gotten yourself killed. And using a quirk without a license is a serious offense. I don't have a quirk, Izuku stammered, shrinking back into his old posture. Don't lie to me. I saw that super strength. It's just, let go of him. The voice was sharp, cutting through the noise of the crowd. A woman stepped out of the smoke. She wore a dark kimono blouse and held a small pig. She adjusted her glasses, the glare hiding her eyes. Shizune-san. Izuku gasped. He is my student, Shizune said, staring down the pro hero. And he is under my medical supervision. I am taking him now. You can't just take him. The police need a statement. We will file a statement at the precinct tomorrow, Shizune lied smoothly. Right now, he is in shock and has likely inhaled toxic fumes. As his primary care physician, I am removing him from the scene. Come, Izuku. She grabbed Izuku's ear. Ow, ow, ow. You are in so much trouble, she hissed as she dragged him away. Do you have any idea how many laws you just broke? He was dying. Izuku argued. That is the only reason I am not letting Tsunade turn you into a throw rug, Shizune sighed. As they hurried away, disappearing into the crowd before the reporters could swarm, a figure watched from the shadows of a building corner. All Might stood there, clutching a soda bottle. He had been too slow. He had reached his limit. He had watched, helpless, as a boy rushed in. He saw the green spark. He saw the fearless charge. He moved without thinking, All Might whispered. The mark of a true hero. But he also saw the woman. He saw the deference. He saw the disciplined way the boy fought, not with wild power, but with trained precision. He already has a master, All Might realized, a pang of regret in his chest. And a strong one. He looked at his own trembling hand. He needed a successor. He had hoped. No matter. The boy was safe. The hostage was safe. All Might turned and walked away, coughing blood into his hand. Good job, young man. The aftermath, scars and silence. That night, the lecture was brutal. Tsunade paced the living room. Izuku sat in Saiza, kneeling position, on the tatami, looking at his knees. You exposed our style, Tsunade ranted. You acted without backup. You used an A-rank forbidden technique, the Chakra scalpel, on a fluid body, which could have backfired and caused an embolism in the hostage. I calculated the risk, Izuku said quietly. Tsunade stopped pacing. She looked at him. You calculated? The sludge was invading his airway. Tidal volume was decreasing. I had less than 60 seconds before hypoxic brain injury occurred. The heroes were immobile. The probability of All Might arriving was unknown. Action was the only variable that offered a non-zero chance of survival. Tsunade stared at him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't apologizing for saving a life. He was justifying his medical triage. A slow smile spread across her face. Listen to him, Shizune, Tsunade chuckled. He sounds like a doctor, Shizune sighed, putting a cup of tea in front of Izuku. He sounds like a reckless doctor. He sounds like you. Tsunade crouched down in front of Izuku. She put a hand on his shoulder. You did good, kid. Izuku's head snapped up. Really? You saved the patient, Tsunade said. That's the job. But next time? Don't get caught on camera. We're supposed to be secret weapons, not news headlines. She stood up. Now, go clean the bathroom. You still owe me for the cup. Izuku smiled, a genuine, bright smile. Yes, sure. The final push. The third year flew by. Izuku mastered the Chakra scalpel, on fish, mostly. He learned to brew antidotes for 40 different poisons. He learned to punch rocks into dust, trees into splinters, and once, by accident, a used car into a compact cube. But as the days ticked down toward the UA entrance exam, attention grew in the house. Izuku was ready physically. He was a weapon. But Tsunade knew there was one last hurdle. The contract. It was the week before the exam. Izuku was finishing his morning kata. Pack your bags, Green Bean, Tsunade said, walking out onto the porch. Where are we going? Izuku asked, wiping sweat from his neck. To the forest, Tsunade said. Her expression was solemn. It's time you met the family. Family? The Katsuyu, Shizune whispered reverently. The slug princesses. Tsunade looked at the sky. You have the strength. You have the knowledge. Now you need the alliance. If you want to be the greatest hero, you can't just fight alone. You need to know how to call for help. She threw him a scroll. Get ready. The final test isn't about punching. It's about your soul. Izuku caught the scroll. He gripped it tight. He was ready. He had to be. Omake, Bakugo's confusion. Katsuki Bakugo sat in his room, staring at the wall. He replayed the scene in his head for the 1000th time. The heat. The suffocation. And then... Deku. Not the trembling, useless Deku. But a blur of green. A hand that cut through the sludge like a knife. A punch that changed the weather. What the hell was that? Bakugo whispered. He looked at his own hands. Sparks popped from his palms. He said he didn't have a quirk. But that wasn't normal. Bakugo grit his teeth. You think you're better than me now, Deku? You think you can look down on me? He grabbed a dumbbell and started curling it furiously. I'll crush you. You ache. I'll find out what you're hiding, and I'll crush you. But for the first time in his life, the thought of crushing Deku didn't feel like a certainty. It felt like a challenge, and deep down, buried under layers of pride and anger, he was grateful. Damn nerd, he muttered. The smell of the underground was distinct. It wasn't just the dampness of the earth or the metallic tang of rusted pipes. It was the scent of desperation. It smelled of old blood, cheap antiseptic, and fear. Izuku Midoriya stood over a stainless steel table that had seen better days, his hands encased in latex gloves that glowed with a faint, wavering teal light. Hold him down! He barked, his voice cracking slightly, betraying his age but not his intent. I'm trying, kid! He's thrashing like a marlin. The man on the table was a vigilante known as Spike Strip. His quirk allowed him to grow iron spikes from his skin, but right now, that quirk was killing him. He had taken a hit from a villain with a warping quirk, twisting his left arm into a spiraled mess of flesh and metal. A spike had grown inward, piercing the brachial artery. Blood spurted in a rhythmic, terrifying arc, splashing against Izuku's plastic face shield. Pressure dropping. Shizune's voice was calm, cutting through the chaos like a scalpel. She was monitoring the vitals on a machine that looked like it had been salvaged from a junk heap in the 90s. Systolic is under 80. He's going into hypovolemic shock. I can't see the tear. Izuku yelled, panic clawing at his throat. The blood was everywhere. It was warm and sticky, and it made the tools slippery. There's too much blood. Don't look with your eyes, Izuku. The command came from the corner of the room. Tsunade sat on a stool, reading a horse racing form, seemingly uninterested. But Izuku knew better. She was watching every movement, judging every flicker of his chakra. Look with your chakra. Tsunade snapped. Map the network. Find the rupture. Clamp it. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut for a fraction of a second. He forced his breathing to slow. The chaotic noise of the clinic, the groans of other patients, the hum of the generator, the shouting, faded away. Sense it. He pushed his chakra out through his fingertips. He didn't feel the skin or the muscle. He felt the flow. He felt the frantic, fading pulse of the man's life force. There, a jagged tear in the arterial wall, hidden behind a shard of bone. Izuku didn't use a hemostat. He didn't have time. He plunged his glowing fingers directly into the wound. Chakra scalpel, cauterized mode, focused output. He adjusted the frequency of his chakra. Instead of cutting, he generated heat. Controlled, precise heat. Sizzle. The smell of cooked meat filled the air. The vigilante screamed, a raw, guttural sound, before passing out from the pain, but the spurting stopped. Bleeding arrested, Shizune announced. Pressure stabilizing. Heart rate is thready but consistent. Izuku slumped against the table, his knees buckling. He pulled his hands out. They were shaking violently. The teal light faded, leaving only blood-soaked gloves. Start a saline drip, Izuku whispered. And get the bone saw. We need to remove that spike before we can close the muscle. I'll handle the extraction, Shizune said, stepping in and gently nudging Izuku aside. You take 5. Your chakra control was flickering at the end. Izuku peeled off his gloves and walked to the sink. He scrubbed his hands until the skin was raw. The water turned pink as it spiraled down the drain. He looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror. Dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. There was a smear of blood on his cheek. He didn't look like a hero student. He looked like a war surgeon. That was sloppy. Tsunade's voice came from behind him. Izuku stiffened. I stopped the bleeding. You hesitated for 3 seconds, Tsunade said, walking over to pour herself a cup of terrible instant coffee. In 3 seconds, a heart beats roughly 3 to 4 times. That's 3 pumps of blood lost. If he had been weaker, or if the cut had been a millimeter wider, he'd be dead. I couldn't see. You panicked, Tsunade corrected. She leaned against the counter, looking at him over the rim of her cup. You saw the blood and you remembered you were a human boy. A medic ninja cannot be human in the operating room. You are a mechanic. The patient is a machine. You fix the machine. You can cry about it later. She gestured to the door. Go outside. Get some air. You smell like fear. Izuku nodded, grabbing his jacket. He walked up the concrete stairs that led out of the basement clinic and into the alleyway above. It was raining again. The cool water felt good on his face. This was the Red Lotus Clinic, an illegal medical facility Tsunade operated for those who fell through the cracks of society. Vigilantes, people with mutation quirks who were denied insurance, even low-level thugs who didn't want the police involved. Izuku had been volunteering here for 6 months. It was the practical application phase of his training. He leaned against the brick wall and slid down until he was sitting on the wet pavement. He looked at his hands. I saved him, he muttered. But I was scared. He remembered All Might's smile. All Might always saved people with a smile. He made it look easy, but All Might doesn't have to stitch them back together. A dark thought whispered in Izuku's mind. All Might stops the villain. He doesn't see what happens after the adrenaline fades. Izuku clenched his fist. He felt heavy. The weight of a life was heavier than any boulder Tsunade had made him lift. The art of the needle. The next morning, the clinic was closed. Training resumed at the quarry. The rain had stopped, leaving the world gray and damp. Mist clung to the ground, swirling around the rocky outcrops. Section 3, Senban and Poisons, Shizune announced. She stood 20 meters away. She didn't look like the kind nurse from the clinic. She wore a flak jacket over her kimono, a pouch strapped to her thigh, and a metal protector on her forehead, a relic from her village, scratched but polished. You have become proficient at dodging huge rocks, Shizune said, her voice echoing in the quiet quarry. Tsunade's style is loud. It is overwhelming force. If you get hit, you die. She reached into her pouch. My style is different. It is quiet. If you get hit, you wish you had died. Izuku gulped, adjusting his stance. Understood. Your objective, Shizune said, holding up 3 thin, metal needles between her fingers, is to reach me and land a single tag on my shoulder. My objective is to stop you. That sounds easier than the boulder training, Izuku said, hopeful. Begin. Izuku launched himself forward. He was fast now. His legs, reinforced with chakra, ate up the distance. He watched her hands. She throws with her wrist, he analyzed. Standard trajectory. Shizune flicked her wrist. Zip. 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 3 Senban needles flew through the air. They were barely visible, glinting silver in the dull light. Izuku dodged left. He saw them coming. Easy. But as he moved, Shizune's hands blurred. She didn't throw 3. She threw 10. And she didn't throw them straight. She curved them. Clang. Izuku deflected one with a kunai he had been given, but he felt a sharp sting on his right thigh. Ack. He looked down. A tiny needle was embedded in his quadriceps. 1, Shizune counted calmly. It's just a scratch. Izuku yelled, pressing forward. He ignored the needle. He was 10 meters away. Then, his leg gave out. It simply stopped working. His knee buckled, and he face-planted into the mud. What? Izuku tried to stand, but his right leg felt like dead weight. It was numb. The Senban was coated in a localized paralytic agent derived from the pufferfish, Shizune explained, not moving from her spot. It targets the motor neurons. It should wear off in, 20 minutes. You poison me? Izuku gasped, dragging himself upright using his good leg. Battlefield simulation, Shizune said. A medic is a high-priority target. Enemies will not just try to smash you. They will try to incapacitate you. If you cannot fight with poison in your veins, you are dead. She threw another volley. Izuku rolled. He couldn't run. He had to crawl, roll, and hop. Zip. A needle grazed his cheek. Zip. A needle stuck into his left shoulder. That one, Shizune said cheerfully, is a hallucinogen. Mild. You might see some colors. The world tilted. The gray quarry suddenly turned a vibrant shade of purple. The rocks began to breathe. Shizune appeared to have 3 heads. Focus! Izuku screamed at himself, slapping his own face. Circulate the chakra. Flush the system. Tsunade had taught him that a burst of chakra could temporarily disrupt foreign agents in the bloodstream. It wasn't a cure, but it bought time. He flared his chakra. The purple hue faded slightly. Good, Shizune noted. Now phase 2. She brought her hands to her mouth. Ninja art, poison fog. She exhaled. A dark, purple cloud erupted from her mouth, expanding rapidly. It rolled over the ground, heavy and ominous, consuming the space between them. If you breathe this, Shizune's voice came from inside the cloud, you will be unconscious in 10 seconds. Come and get me, Izuku. Izuku stared at the wall of death approaching him. He was on one leg. His shoulder was throbbing. Think. I can't run through it. I can't breathe it. I have to disperse it. Wind, he muttered. I need wind. He didn't have a wind nature quirk. He didn't have wind jutsu, but I have strength. He planted his good foot. He clenched his fist, displaced the air. He waited until the fog was 5 meters away. He took a deep breath of clean air and held it. Smash! He punched the air directly in front of him. Boom! The shockwave blasted outward. It hit the fog bank like a physical wall. The purple cloud swirled, disrupted by the vacuum, and split down the middle, creating a tunnel of clear air. Izuku hopped through the tunnel. He saw Shizune. She looked surprised. He lunged, reaching out with his hand. Gotcha! His fingers brushed her shoulder. Poof! Shizune exploded into a log. Substitution? Izuku cried out. Behind you, Shizune whispered. Izuku spun around, but it was too late. The cold tip of a kunai pressed against his throat. Dead, Shizune said softly. Izuku slumped, the adrenaline leaving him. The paralysis in his leg was getting worse. I lost. You cleared the fog, Shizune said, holstering her weapon. She reached into her pouch and pulled out 2 vials. Drink this. It's the antidote. Izuku downed the vial-tasting liquid. Within seconds, the feeling returned to his leg, and the world stopped breathing. You rely too much on your eyes, Shizune critiqued as she helped him up. And you telegraph your attacks. But displacing the gas with air pressure? That was clever. Lady Tsunade is rubbing off on you. Is that a good thing? For your survival? Yes. For the structural integrity of the city? No. The 99th failure. 3 months remained until the UA entrance exam. Izuku stood at the base of the training cliff. It was a secluded spot overlooking the ocean, far away from prying eyes. In front of him sat the rock. It was a boulder of dense granite, roughly the size of a minivan. It was scarred, chipped, and cracked, bearing the marks of thousands of punches. But it was still whole. Tsunade sat on a nearby ledge, her legs dangling over the precipice. She was carving a piece of wood with a kunai. Attempt number 99, she droned. Whenever you're ready. Izuku wrapped his hands. The bandages were fresh. He had been trying to destroy this specific rock for 4 months. He could break smaller rocks. He could smash concrete. But this granite? It was stubborn. It mocked him. I'm ready, Izuku said. He stepped up to the rock. He closed his eyes. Chakra flow. Root the feet. Twist the hip. Focus everything into the knuckles. He visualized the energy. It was a roaring river. He needed to dam it up and release it all at once. Ha-ya! Izuku punched. Thwack. His fist connected. The ground shook. Dust rose. Izuku pulled his hand back, panting. He looked at the rock. A large crack ran down the center. A chunk the size of a basketball fell off, but the boulder remained. Failure, Tsunade said. She didn't even look up. Izuku let out a scream of frustration and kicked the dirt. Why? I'm doing everything right. The rotation, the compression, the release. Why won't it shatter? Because you're hitting the rock, Tsunade said. That's the point. No, Tsunade hopped down from the ledge. She walked over to the boulder and patted it affectionately. You're hitting the surface. You're trying to push the rock away with force. But granite has density. It pushes back. She poked him in the chest. You're fighting the object. You need to send your chakra through the object. Don't punch the surface. Punch the space behind it. Fill the rock with your energy until it can't hold itself together anymore. Izuku stared at her. Send it through? Think about the clinic, Tsunade said softly. This surprised him. She rarely brought up the clinic during combat training. When you fixed Spike Strip, did you heal the skin first? No, Izuku shook his head. I had to go deep. I had to fix the artery inside. Exactly. You bypassed the surface to affect the core. Destruction is the same principle as healing, Izuku. It's just messier. You have to locate the structural weakness, the artery of the stone, and overload it. She turned away. That was attempt 99. You have one attempt left for today. If you fail, we delay the summoning contract. Delay? Izuku went pale. But the exam. If you can't break a rock, you can't survive the contract ceremony, Tsunade said grimly. Katsuyu is a benevolent being, but the summoning tax is heavy. If your chakra isn't potent enough, the contract will drain you dry. You'll die. She walked back to her chair. Rest. Meditate. One last try. The space between breaths. Izuku sat in the lotus position in front of the boulder. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the cliff. The ocean waves crashed below, a rhythmic thrumming that matched his heartbeat. He didn't think about All Might. He didn't think about Bakugo. He thought about the notebook Shizune had made him write. Biological weak points. Every system has a flaw. Every structure has a stress point. He opened his eyes. He looked at the rock. He didn't see a minivan-sized obstacle anymore. He saw a lattice of minerals. He saw the microscopic fissures created by wind and rain. He saw the density. He stood up. He didn't scream this time. He didn't hype himself up. He felt strangely calm. The zone that athletes talked about. He walked up to the rock. He placed his hand gently on the surface. Hello? He pulsed his chakra. A small, investigative wave. He felt the vibrations travel through the stone. There, deep inside, slightly to the left of the center, there was a fault line. A natural imperfection in the granite formation. That's the artery. Izuku pulled his hand back. He widened his stance. He took a deep breath, inhaling the salt air. He gathered his chakra. But he didn't pile it up like a bomb. He sharpened it. He spun it. He turned his fist into a needle, and his arm into a piston. Don't push. Penetrate. Tsunade stopped carving. She watched him. She saw the change in his posture. The tension was gone. Finally, she whispered. Izuku exhaled. In the space between breaths he moved. Shinero. It was a whisper. His fist struck the stone. There was no loud crack this time. No explosion of chips. For a second, nothing happened. Izuku's fist was buried an inch into the stone. Then, a web of white lines appeared, radiating outward from his knuckles. They raced across the surface of the boulder, wrapping around the back, covering every square inch in a spiderweb of destruction. Crumble. The sound was like a heavy sigh. The massive boulder didn't split. It collapsed. It turned into a pile of gravel and dust, sliding down around Izuku's feet until he was standing ankle-deep in what used to be a monolith. Izuku stood there, his fist still extended over the pile of dust. He blinked. I missed the fault line by 2 millimeters, he muttered. If I had hit it perfectly, the dust would be finer. Oh, shut up, you perfectionist, Tsunade laughed. Izuku turned around. Tsunade was grinning. A real, genuine grin that reached her eyes. You did it. I did it, Izuku repeated. He looked at the pile of gravel. He picked up a handful of dust and let it slip through his fingers. I really did it. That was the 100th attempt, Tsunade said, walking over. She ruffled his hair, getting dust everywhere. And it was perfect. You stopped trying to be strong, and you started being smart. She looked at the setting sun. You're ready. For the exam? For the contract, Tsunade said. Her face grew serious. Tomorrow, we go to the deep woods. The slug princess is waiting. Interlude, the notebook entry. That night, Izuku couldn't sleep. His hand didn't hurt, He had reinforced it perfectly, but his mind was racing. He sat at his desk, the light of his lamp casting a warm glow. He opened his notebook. Entry Year 3, Month 10. Status, milestone reached. Today, I destroyed the target. But Shirsho was right. It wasn't about the power. It was about understanding the target. If I can understand a rock, I can understand a villain. If I can break a rock from the inside, I can break a villain's will. But, he paused, looking at his other hand. The one that had held the scalpel in the clinic. Power is scary. If I had used that punch on a person, on Kaken, they would be dead. Just like that. Gone. Tsunade Shirsho teaches me to be a monster so I can fight monsters. But Shizune-san teaches me to be a healer so I can save the humans. I have to be both. I have to be the shield that shatters the spear. I have to be the hand that kills the disease to save the body. He sketched a small drawing of the pile of gravel. Next to it, he sketched the mended wing of the pigeon he had saved in Year 2. I am not All Might. I can't just smile and punch the sky to change the weather. My path is messier. My path is blood and dust, but it's my path. He closed the book. Hero analysis for the future was gone. The cover now read, Field Medic Log, Volume 1, the morning of the pact. The next morning, the atmosphere in the house was solemn. Even Taunton seemed quiet. Shizune presented Izuku with a new outfit. It wasn't his green tracksuit. It was a combat uniform. Dark green pants with taped ankles. A sleeveless black compression shirt, mesh armor, she called it, under a gray kimono-style top. And on the back, freshly embroidered, was a red circle with the kanji for medic. It's amazing, Izuku whispered, touching the fabric. Is this Kevlar? Chakra conductive weave, Shizune corrected. It won't stop a bullet point blank, but it resists slashing and heat. And the pockets are lined to keep herbs fresh. Put it on, Tsunade commanded. She was wearing her combat gear too, the green haori over the gray suit. We're leaving. They traveled north, far beyond the city limits, into the dense, untouched forests of the mountain ranges. The trees here were old, twisting and massive. The air was thick with spiritual energy. After hours of hiking, they reached a clearing. It was a perfect circle of grass, surrounded by towering trees. In the center lay a large, flat stone. This is a weak point between dimensions, Tsunade explained. A place where the walls of reality are thin. The Shikatsu forest is not on a map. It is a summoned realm. She bit her thumb. Blood welled up. She slammed her hand onto the stone. Summoning jutsu. Black markings spread across the stone like ivy. A plume of white smoke exploded, filling the clearing. When the smoke cleared, something was there. It wasn't the giant, building-sized Katsuyu that Izuku had read about in Tsunade's scrolls. It was a smaller portion of the great entity, perhaps the size of a large truck. It was white with blue streaks, glistening in the sunlight. Its voice, when it spoke, was soft, feminine, and echoed in Izuku's mind. Tsunade-sama. It has been a long time, Katsuyu. Tsunade bowed respectfully. Shizune and Izuku followed suit. I have brought him. The giant slug turned its eye stalks toward Izuku. This is the boy? He is small. He breaks rocks, Tsunade said with a smirk. And he stitches arteries. He's ready to sign. Katsuyu glided forward. The ground didn't shake. She moved with eerie silence. She stopped inches from Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. I have watched you through Tsunade's eyes. I have felt your struggle through the chakra link. Izuku looked up. He wasn't afraid. He felt a sense of peace radiating from the creature. It is an honor, Katsuyu-sama. The contract of the Shikatsu forest is not lightly given, Katsuyu said. We do not serve those who seek power for glory. We serve those who seek to preserve life. We are the ultimate shield, but also the acid that dissolves the wicked. A scroll appeared from Katsuyu's mouth. It was massive, rolling out onto the grass. It was filled with names written in blood. Izuku saw them. Hashirama Senju. Tobarama Senju. Tsunade Senju. Sakura Haruno, a name he didn't recognize. Sign, Katsuyu commanded. Write your name in blood. Bind your chakra to the forest. If your will is weak, the scroll will reject you. Izuku bit his thumb. He winced, tasting iron. He walked to the scroll. He looked at the blank space next to Tsunade's name. He didn't hesitate. He pressed his thumb to the paper. Izuku Midoriya. He channeled his chakra. Not the explosive power he used on the rock. The warm, knitting power he used in the clinic. The scroll glowed. The blood seeped into the paper, turning from red to a brilliant blue, then back to red. Accepted, Katsuyu announced. Izuku felt a sudden drain, like a hook in his navel pulling him forward. His knees buckled, but he stayed standing. I'm still here, he gasped. Tsunade laughed. You didn't pass out. That's better than I did my first time. Katsuyu bowed her head. Welcome to the lineage, Izuku Midoriya. You may summon me, and my sisters to aid you. But remember, our power is shared. If you run out of chakra, we disappear. And you die. I understand, Izuku said. Then go. The world of heroes awaits. Do not embarrass us. With a poof, Katsuyu vanished. Izuku stood in the clearing, the wind rustling his new uniform. He looked at his hand, the blood still fresh on his thumb. I did it, he whispered. You did, Tsunade said, walking up behind him. She handed him a small cup. Drink. Sake? Izuku asked, eyeing the liquid. Juice, Tsunade rolled her eyes. You're underage. But I'm having sake. She clinked her cup against his. To the 100th failure, she toasted. And the one success, Izuku replied. They drank. Now, Tsunade said, wiping her mouth and turning back toward the city. Her eyes hardened. The entrance exam is tomorrow. You've broken rocks. You've healed wounds. You've signed the pact. She grinned, the sun flaring behind her. Go show Yue what a quirkless kid can do. Izuku clenched his fist. The flame in his gut roared. Yes, sure show.